Whatever one's view of Lyndon Johnson, the impact of his great society has been and for many years is likely to continue to be penetrating and pervasive. This book is about how this infernally complex, driven, and driving president, a man of deep personal insecurities and dizzying mood swings, did it. How he mastered the bone-crushing politics of civil rights and anti-poverty wars. How he used every waking minute of his presidency and every lever of power, sometimes brushing aside traditional separation of powers. How he mixed arguments, flattery, favors, and veiled and not-so-veiled threats to persuade congressional, business, labor, education, health care, and religious leaders to support his proposals, or at least accept them, however grudgingly. This is the story of how LBJ stepped around or over those who opposed him, sometimes using tactics that would make Machiavelli blush. It is a story of how he did it all with laser-like focus on completing the work that Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman left unfinished, and with the goal of achieving a largely peaceful social and economic revolution. This is also, as accurately as I can tell it, a personal story of one of the most compelling and controversial and perhaps the most complicated presidents this nation has ever seen. Historians will study, analyze, and debate Lyndon Johnson for decades to come. While we await their work, I have written to provide what historians often lack in trying to assess earlier presidents: an eyewitness account, a real-time close-up of a president's world from someone who lived and worked in his presence almost 24/7 for several exhilarating, exhausting, and often exasperating years. With the recent release of the Johnson tapes, the smash hit play All the Way on Broadway starring Bryan Cranston as LBJ, and numerous 50th anniversary commemorations and critiques of the Great Society programs in the media, Americans are coming to appreciate that Johnson's initiatives are so entwined with their lives that, as the Washington Post reported, it's hard to imagine the country as we know it without them. So now, with a half-century of hindsight, it's time to re-examine the accomplishments of this mercurial, hyperkinetic chief executive. In this new introduction to my 1991 memoir of my years in the Johnson White House, I'll first review the vast scope of the Great Society legislation, programs that touch and improve the lives of every American today. Then I'll discuss some of the ways Johnson marshaled the power to realize his social and economic revolution. Who knows? Perhaps Johnson's path will one day serve as a roadmap for current and future leaders. The Great Society Today. For the past half a century, the tragedy of Vietnam has so clouded the public and scholarly vision of Lyndon Johnson that it has been difficult to see what his domestic achievements actually mean for America. That disastrous war, coupled with a fear of being called liberal as the country became more conservative, has led leaders of his own Democratic Party, even some compatriots who voted for his Great Society programs, to relegate Lyndon Johnson to near invisibility for much of the past 50 years. Many recent Democratic leaders have avoided mentioning his name in their speeches, political campaigns, and conventions. That silence has given LBJ's conservative critics an open field to score repeatedly with unanswered denunciations. Moreover, LBJ was a force of nature, with seemingly 1,000 faces, a big-eared Texan calloused by growing up in the raw poverty of the hill country with no running water or electricity. He was a politician who literally went nose to nose to overwhelm someone he was trying to convince. A great